with the introductions of Regulation G, and now you can use a restricted Pokemon in the format, but only one though. There's a lot of Pokemon that had actually benefited from this. Pokemon you usually wouldn't see on Regulation H, F, etc. So with the restricted Pokemon such as Calyrex Shadow, Calyrex Ice, Groudon, Koraidon, and Kyogre to set the weather, and Miraidon to set up the electric terrain, a lot of Pokemon has benefited from this. The first Pokemon I actually want to dive into, which I think has benefited, and it's probably one of the ones that's benefited the most, is actually Minxiao. So Minxiao has not really seen much play in previous formats. It hasn't really been good, but in this format it's incredibly good because it has inner focus, which allows you to not be flinched or intimidated. So basically you can't get faked out or intimidated by Incineroar. So this is basically like a incredible hard counter to Incineroar, especially because it has this fighting type, and it gets access to it gets access to fake out itself, which means it can fake out Incineroar itself, but it can also use close combat into Incineroar, and pretty much with the stab power actually one hit KO it. Then you also get access to stuff like White Guard, which is very, very strong next to because a lot of these restricted Pokemon uses spread moves such as Astral Barrage and Glacial Glance, I think it's called, and all this other stuff. So this Pokemon is incredibly strong. It is usually a Pokemon you want to see next to a Calyrex Shadow Rider. It gets stuff like Detect, so you can obviously protect yourself, Calm Mind. You can use it with Helping Hands. Like, there's a bunch of different stuff. Taunt as well. Like, there's a bunch of different stuff this Pokemon can actually do. You can even... another thing I really like about this Pokemon, which I think is incredibly strong, is the access to Feint, which is actually nullifies Detect, Protect, and Quick. That's White Guard. So essentially, if your opponent uses a White Guard or a Detect, you just use a Feint into that slot, and essentially that breaks the Protect, and the other Pokemon can go through with an attack. This is incredibly powerful right next to a Calyrex Shadow Rider. So essentially this Pokemon is not here to stay long, so you don't want to really focus about its defensive stats. You can already see they're actually kind of bad, so you just want to pump that speed up and go for that full attack, and then, you know, either bump up speed or go Adamant. That's really up to you. I'd probably prefer to go Timid, just because I like always being the Pokemon who moves first. And then for a item focus, is probably the most optimal one. And then Terra Fighting, because you don't really focus on anything else, because you don't really need to. So this is probably the best move for a moveset or Terra for Minxiao. So that's definitely a Pokemon I think that's benefited. Another Pokemon I think that's benefited a lot from the restriction coming in is the Comfrey. Comfrey is extremely powerful because it gets access to this ability here called Triarch, which essentially makes its healing moves have a very high priority. So you can slap on stuff like Draining Kiss, which means you can deal incredibly powerful damage while heal yourself. And then, of course, this is the real reason why this is actually a pretty good Pokemon, is because it gets this move down here, which is called Flora Healing. And essentially what Flora Healing does is that it heals the target you hit 50% of its HP. So essentially this is actually just a not rage powder, sorry, a pollen puff, but because it has this ability Triarch or whatever you want to call it, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but basically it gets it's called a priority increase by 3. So essentially this move before anything else, which means that if you have an extra Pokemon such as bulky Pokemon such as Groudon, Samacenta Crown, and most likely the one you see with the most is the Terrapagos down here, where you can see here Terrapagos Stella as, like, look at these fucking stats. Like, it has nutty stats essentially. So right next to a Terrapagos, this Comfrey actually looks incredibly powerful. So you get access to a lot of different stuff that's very good. You also get access to stuff like Helping Hand and Encore, Light Screen. Like, you even get Taunt, Trick Room, and Tailwind. So you can actually use this Pokemon on a very different reasons of, like, look at all these Sunny Day. Like, there's so much stuff this Pokemon gets you can use. So it's an incredibly good support Pokemon, especially for those Terrapagos out there and other bulky Pokemon. Another Pokemon I think that's benefited a lot, even though it's seen play a lot in previous formats, is the Indeedee, because of its Psychic Surge. So essentially with Psychic Surge you can do something like using the Calyrex Shadow Rider here, and then you can pair it with that, and then you can use Expanded Force, because with Expanding Force and Psychic Terrain has 1.5 power, and it has both Pokemon instead of just one. And also, why the reason is that it's so powerful with the Calyrex Shadow is because Calyrex Shadow is 4 times weak to Dark type because of its Psychic Ghost. So essentially, this Pokemon is very, very weak to Sucker Punches, which can come out from either a Shinpao, or Blue Bonnet, or a Urshifu Dark. So essentially, it's very, very vulnerable to those Sucker Punches. Can definitely be a problem dealing with. So Indeedee here is actually very, very powerful because of that, because it sets up the Psychic Terrain, and when Psychic Terrain is up, no priority move is allowed. So essentially, you can actually not use the Sucker Punch into your Calyrex Shadow Rider, which then essentially means that you just get, there's not really a way to hit you with priority unless you are faster. You can also put stuff on. It's incredibly good as a support one because it also gets Follow Me. So essentially that stops the Sucker Punches too, and it redirects. And generally you get the Heal Pulse, which is very, very good. You can use Helping Hand to even power up those Astral Barrages even more. Trick Room. You can even do something like a Trick Room and a where is that there? In Prism Split, if you want to make sure your opponent doesn't set up a Trick Room, essentially, you can use this. Because Ferrograph is a very good counter into the Shadow Rider. So you can do this and ensure that your opponent doesn't set up the Trick Room. So, like, this Pokemon is incredibly powerful. So you probably want to run something like a either like a Dazzling Gleam, Hyper Voice, something like that. And you probably here want to do a Follow Me like that, and you want to do a Helping Hand potentially, and then you can here it's kind of like up to you. You can either do like a Protect. You can even do here. You can actually do the Trick Room too. I'll probably do Trick Room myself, and then you basically just want to make this Pokemon as bulky as possible. So this is probably like how you want to deal or use this Pokemon most likely, because you just want to make sure this Pokemon is very placed on the field. So stuff you can use is you can use stuff like Psychic Seed to add that special defense to be even higher. You can use stuff like Rocky Helmet to hurt the Urshifus. You can use Mental Herb so you can't get taunted. Like there's a bunch of different stuff you can use on this Pokemon. Mental Herb as well. So yeah, there's a bunch of different stuff you can use for this Pokemon. But yeah, it's definitely a Pokemon I think that's benefit a lot. Another Pokemon. This is more than just one Pokemon. This is actually multiple Pokemon. This is all of the photosynthesis users. Essentially all the past Paradox Pokemons. Because now you don't. Before you essentially only had Torkoal realistically, or Tornadus to set up Sun, but now you have Koraidon and Groudon. So now you actually have really strong Pokemon which can set up stuff like Walking Wake, which is incredibly powerful in the Sun. Roaring Moon, Raging Bolt, Gouging Fire, Fluttermane, and I've even seen some Blue Bonnet out there getting some play, etc. So all of the like the one that's benefit the most, obviously it's the strongest one, because now you don't have to focus on putting on this booster energy. You can just put stuff like a Focus Sash, which I've been a very, very huge fan of, while still having the photosynthesis ability activated. You can even use something like a Choice Specs if you want to do something like that. Like there's so many options now you can use this Pokemon. You can even slap on a Pixie Plate if you want to do that. Like, there's so much stuff, and obviously, personally, I think the best will always be something like wrong down here, something like this, because you essentially want to outspeed everything, and then so yeah, in general, I think the photosynthesis Pokemon is what has benefited a lot as well. Other Pokemons I think has benefited a lot is obviously the Quark Drive users, because of before we didn't really have much of a electric terrain setter, but now we do have the Miraidon, which is on top of that an incredibly powerful Pokemon, which now we can finally use the abilities of Iron Hands, Iron Bundle, Boulder, Iron Crown, and all this good stuff. So these Pokemon has definitely benefited. I'm not sure if we are going to see play from a lot of them, because they are not on the same level as the past Pokemon. The only one that's really powerful here, I think, is the Iron Juggler, Iron Hands, and Bundle. But in general, I think they have definitely all of them benefited a lot. Like Iron Valiant has definitely benefited because it's a very good support one. Like you get stuff like Coaching, Destiny Bond, Encore, Helping Hand, Light Screen, Psych-Up, even use stuff like Taunt, Thunder Wave, and White Guard, which is the most noticeable one. You got Hypnosis, Imprison, Quick Guard, Trick Room. Like this Pokemon, it's a very, very strong support Pokemon. So yeah, I definitely think the Quark Drive Pokemon has definitely benefited as well. Yeah, then next Pokemon I think that's benefited is more than just one Pokemon. It is the Genie, so essentially Tornadus, Landorus, and Thundurus. Oh, that's not what I meant to do. Not there we go. Yes, Thundurus. So I think these has benefited a lot because now you get the Kyogre that sets up the rain. So you don't have to use a turn doing that. You can focus on going straight for either attack or Tailwind. Because here you get Bleak Wind Storm. Over here you get where is that? You get Sandshrew Storm. Then over here you get Wild Bolt Storm, I'm pretty sure. So essentially, all of these moves is 100 base power, 80% accuracy. However, none of them can miss in rain, and all of them has a 20%. This one has 30% to lower speed, which is incredibly good. Here we have 20% chance to burn, which is very, very good. And then we have 20% chance to paralyze, which is also very, very good. So essentially, the free Genies has definitely gained stuff from here. So like even like a Tornadus Landorus on the same team with Kyogre is incredibly powerful in this format. So Genies has definitely benefited from restricted Pokemon coming in. And then the last Pokemon I want to talk about, I think that's benefited. This is kind of like a wild card in my opinion. I don't really see a lot of it. It's more like a personal thing. I would say I've used it on the ladder a lot, and it can be very, very good, but it can also be very, very difficult to use at times. But in general, I think a Pokemon that is not restricted that's benefited is Ditto. The reason I say that is because Ditto gets the Imposter, so on switches, essentially it takes on the face of the Pokemon it is standing next to. This essentially means that if you're going up against a Calyrex Shadow Rider with a +2 or a Summer Center with a +3 or whatever in defense, or a Dondoso, and you put this thing in and it takes on the form, you basically not only copies all of its stats and moves and all and type and stuff, you actually cover all the boosts it has as well. So that means that if your opponent has just run through your team with a Calyrex Shadow Rider and you have got it down and break this focus sash if that's what you're using, if you don't have a focus sash on your own, Ditto here, which then turns into the Calyrex Shadow Rider and actually takes on the form and gets all its moves, stats, and everything, you actually get yourself a Calyrex Shadow Rider. This is incredibly broken in my opinion. Like, this Pokemon is so nutty. Right now I am running the split on it. Then I'm running speed up and stuff like defense down, or something like that. You can even do something like this and be very, very nutty and do something like a split here. So because you don't really know what your essentially you don't really know what your opponent or what, so you don't essentially know if the Pokemon you take on is going to be a physical or physical attacker. So essentially this could be one way to deal with it as well. If you want to opt for the focus sash way, you can also do something like this. And then I've played a lot with the Life Orb version, which is very, very strong as well. You can even do something like a Choice Scarf, then you know you are faster than the opposition Pokemon. Like there's so many options for this Pokemon, and in general I have just stayed with Terra Normal because what I find the most optimizing, especially when I take on the form of a Calyrex Shadow Rider, because I can just, if I haven't burned my Terra yet, I can just kind of use my Calyrex Shadow Rider against his Calyrex Shadow Rider, and then I can just Terra Normal, and then essentially what happens is that he is kind of fried because he can't hit me for Astral Barrages because I am normal type and not weak to that anymore. So essentially, I think this is a Pokemon that is incredibly broken at times, and it's definitely something you shouldn't sleep on, and I would advise you to try and take on. So yeah, if there's any Pokemon you think that I have missed, you think that gained a lot from the restricted, not Pokemons like Ogerpon. Oh, that reminds me, there's another Pokemon actually. Ogerpon, there's actually one, Cornerstone, because Sturdy has actually gained a lot of stuff too, mostly because that it gets the Sturdy, which essentially means you get a free focus sash on it. So if you're using this with a Follow Me next to a an example of this could be the Farigiraf. So essentially you can't get faked up because of the Farigiraf, and then of course you have the Sturdy Follow Me, which means you essentially almost every time it's guaranteed to get up Trick Room. Almost. There's ways to get around this, but it's very, very broken is what I'm trying to say here. So yeah, if there's a Pokemon I didn't mention you think that gain a lot from the restricted Pokemon format, in Regulation G, then make sure you leave that Pokemon down in the comments below. And I'll love to have a discussion about why you think that and why you think I forgot it or something like that. So yeah, if you like today's video, make sure you smash the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, turn on notification. That'll help me massively as a content creator. And also, if you enjoyed the content, I mean, why would you not? But yeah, let me know what you also want to see next from me in the future. And yeah, until next time, happy gaming.